Hello and welcome to our last guide in our series of guides on our little Judiciar. We have a few things left to paint, and then we have to do an overall evaluation of the paint job, decide if there are things we want to change or not, and then call it done after basing it, of course. So let's start with the helmet. Why not? Let's paint the face. So I'm going to be getting myself some bony color I can then desaturate and work up. I think the colors I want to use are the following. I want to use black from watercolor. I want to use English uniform, and I also want to use German yellow. I'm using German yellow instead of white because German yellow is a very off-white color anyway. It's not as white as a white would be. It's a bit of a lower value, but I don't need white on a scala anyway, so no reason to pull it out just yet. Maybe later. For now, I'm fine. So we're gonna get these three colors set up, and then we're gonna be getting ourselves the skull on the helmet painted. After that, we have to paint the little balaclava he has, and then a few more details and we'll be done. At least with the painting of all the details. I don't know if we're gonna be done with the model yet, because I need to figure out if there's something I want to change or not. So let me mix. So to desaturate, I'm adding black, and then this brightish German yellow. As you can see, black and German yellow together make a gray. So if I just add a bit of this color to it, I can give it some of that tone, right? Modifying it and making it a bit more yellowish, more creamy, more bony. So yes, we have these two colors here. I think for now we're good. We can modify them as we go. So I'm going to base coat with the darker of the two colors I mixed. We can literally use the same. I'm gonna show you something cool. We can use the same color to base coat our parchment with. And I'll show you how easily you can make two colors look very different, even though you are starting from the same. It's all about when you introduce white. If you introduce white early, the color will drastically change versus when you don't introduce white or you introduce it late. So the current white we have, the thing we called white is German yellow, which is a very yellow color, which is high value, yes, but it's still a yellowish color. While if I use real white to highlight this base coat, I'm gonna be getting two different colors. So I can start from the same creamy base coat and make it look very different as we go, which is something you have to pay attention to in your own painting, I think, because it will allow you to be smarter and faster and more efficient, and also make your stuff look better, because the less different colors you use in your painting, the better it is. It's like rule number one of art. Every art master ever will teach you to never use more than 3-4 colors in your composition, and then you mix. So like usually it's called the Zorn palette, when you start with a very limited amount of colors and you mix everything. Now, I'm not telling you to work with a Zorn palette on your miniatures, although if you did, you'd get nice results for sure. But what I'm saying is that you don't want to use 11 kinds of colors to paint parchment and then bones, even though they have the same origin, because if you do that, they will clash against each other, because you cannot foresee the consequences of using colors that are so different. Even though they are technically the same color, maybe Xantridasti is very similar to, I don't know, English uniform, for example, but using both of them in a paint job might make them clash for some unforeseen reason. So it's always better to use only one color and modify it. So we have our base coat with more German yellow added to it. And I'm going to be highlighting the top of the skull. As well as the eyebrows. Okay. We can also highlight the nose, the bottom of the eye. Okay. Now we blend. As you know, we make a mix of the previous color with this color here, and we kind of gently place it in. We don't always have to blend. For example, here we have a strong ridge, so we can have a strong shadow too. It's gonna push the contrast, so we can use it. Okay. With more German yellow added to it, we can do our second highlight. This time, trying to push these highlights in the front of the face. And the top of the head here. Okay, again we can blend. And now with pure German yellow, we can do a few glazes. So by thinning the paint a bit, we're not base coating the eyelets anymore, we're just pushing the strength of the light. We can block the color in place, and then we can extend it later. You can see it's already making a massive difference with the painted head. Okay. Uh, we might want to go back to the previous highlight and gently give it a push towards a more brighter color. Because I feel like the forehead is a bit too dark compared to the top highlight we have. It's important to be able to manage the contrast in your models. You don't want to have such strong shadows. Unless you're working on a non-metallic, in which case you might want to, but always better to keep a gradient that makes sense based on what you're painting. Skulls don't really highlight so much. I mean, they do highlight this much, but unless there are specific reasons, they don't get this dark. Especially if they are on a head and not on the ground, right? Because when you see them on the ground, you see very high contrast, because that makes sense. But on a head, when they've been polished and used as a helmet, I don't expect it to be very, very contrasty heavy. You still want contrast, of course, just not as much. Yeah, something more like this. Okay. Feel like we are good now with the skull. We can paint the mask. I'm gonna be starting from a Mournfang brown. Actually, no. Let me show you how the thing I was talking about with the white. So if I add white to the base coat that I used for the skull, I'm gonna get myself a very different color than I would get adding German yellow. It's gonna be similar, but not exactly the same. So you will not perceive the bone and the parchment to be the same thing or the same color, even though it is the same color. And learning how to manage when to add white or when to add another color to a color really makes it important, because it allows you to expand your paint jobs with different colors without actually having them on the palette. It also saves you money because you're not really spending that money on new paints. Okay, we can add an itsy little bit of white to do the edges. Okay. Let me push the German yellow on the top a little bit. Okay. Let's work on the shoulder pad. I'm gonna be starting from a Prussian blue from Vallejo model color. It's a very space marine blue, ultramarine blue. So we can start from this. I'll be base coating it. Okay. While that dries, we can also work on on the on the glass. So for the glass, I'm going to be base coating it in a gray blue. Okay, we can keep that black because honestly, it's just in the back. Okay. After this color has been applied, we can shade it a touch, mostly in the top. Gonna be adding a bit of a dark blue and thin it, because the top is gonna be reflecting less light than the bottom, right? Because it's a glass. So we can make this a little bit darker with a little bit of glazing. If you feel like the color is not really taking effect, don't push it. Don't add more black to get a stronger coverage or a stronger effect, because you're glazing. So just give it time, let it dry, and do it again. We can take this a little bit into the bottom area. Not too much though. And if we feel like our glaze is giving us troubles being blended, we can simply wet blend the glaze with the back with the mid-tone. Okay. With this done, we can use our English uniform just in its purity. I'm painting sand. Actually, I'm gonna be adding a little bit of this grayish blue we had as a base coat. I'm gonna be adding a little bit of it to the English uniform. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to make it look like this is behind the glass, not on top it. So by adding some of the color of the glass on it, we can make it look more more believable. Okay. We can follow up on that knowledge of wanting this sand to look like it's behind the glass by shading it a little bit with this blue, the dark blue we used, towards the bottom to follow the roundedness of the of the of the glass, right? We're following the volume here. Okay. Now we can make a very bright glassy color, so we can add a lot of white to this color. And we can sketch in our first light, which is going to be following the and we don't need to blend this. We can just have it follow the volume like so. We can make it a little bit more scattered of a light. We can have less of a line effect and more of a scattering light effect, which is what happens to glass by thinning the paint a little bit and pushing it towards the line or dotting it on the line itself. gonna make it look a little bit more random, a little bit more real. We can use this same color to highlight the others. Let me think it a bit more. Okay. Okay. We can go a little bit darker with our shadows, I think. Just to make the object look more rounded. Okay. And then with pure white we can do a bit of a glint of light on the other side too. Or at the bottom, up to you. I'm gonna be putting it here. And we can also slightly reinforce the light. Yeah, like so. I think it works. I like it. We can go back to our pure English uniform and sort of highlight a little bit, trying to follow the volume here, but It's just a matter of refining now. Like you can glaze to subdue some of these highlights. Maybe here on the top, because maybe the sketching was a bit too strong. You can see a bit too much the brush strokes. You want to tone it down a little bit and then rescue it again. But yeah, I think we're good there. So we have a couple more things to do. We have to do them. Oh well, actually, there is a parchment here that I have to paint. Yeah. Let us paint the eyes. I'm going to be base coating them in white, Chimera white. Let it dry. Since I'm painting a white over a black, I'm going to be having to reinforce it quite a bit. So I'm going to let it dry and then paint it again. In the meantime, we can use the Mornfang brown I announced earlier for the mask, the COVID mask, yes. Okay, I'm gonna make it a little bit darker by adding some black to it, just a little bit, and we can base coat it. Okay, after base coating it with pure Mornfang brown, we can sketch in the highlights on the front. And we can add some of this German yellow to do one final highlight. Maybe a little bit more German yellow. I don't want to go into pure German yellow, but a little bit more just for strengthening some of the highlights. Especially around the ridge there. Okay. Okay, the white should be dry. We can rebase coat it a little bit. Okay. While we are here, we can also paint the bottom of the eyes in a bit of a darker color. Shade it. I mean, by bottom of the eyes, I mean under the eyebrows. Because leaving black there wouldn't make too much sense. We want a bit of a dark color. Okay, with the eyes base coated, we can glaze some of our scarlet red. You can use scarlet red, you can use chimera red. Any red you have that is strong, a wash, a contrast. Whatever you want. Like, if you don't use a contrast, it's fine. As long as it's, you know, red. And on top of the white, the red will be looking very bright. Although this specific red is a bit eh. So I'm going to be actually using... Actually, vermilion from other color sounds like a good color to use for this. It's slightly brighter than Chimera Yellow, Chimera Red. But yeah, base coating white made it easier for me to paint the red on top. Okay. We can add a bit of German yellow to this white, to this red, sorry. Make it very bright. And we can use it to give an highlight to the eyes. We don't want to entirely cover our base coat on them, but we do want to have some light. You can go as far as pure white for this. This white is a bit thin. Okay. We can paint our... we can mix the blue and any of the reds we have to make like a dark purpley color, which is what you would call screamer pink in GW standards, but since I'm mixing colors I already have on the model, I am creating less of a dissonance between them, which is the thing I was talking about earlier. Why get a screamer pink when I can use some color that is the result of a mix between colors already present on the model, right? And then I can add some white to it to quickly highlight. Okay, so with that done, it's now a matter of refinement, making sure that we get all the colors we want, where we want them, how we want them. So you could call the model done. You could freehand something on the shoulder if you want. I'm not really interested in doing that just because I mean, maybe I should. Sure, let's do it. I'm adding some black to the blue, and then we're blending them together to get a bit of a gradient happening here. I'm not too worried about blending because I will be freehanding on top anyway. I can do some little dots of white here on the back. And there too. I can quickly base coat in a dark blue with the gun. And then give it an even quicker highlight. Okay. So now, something I want to talk about is white balance. Now that everything has been base coated, you probably felt like the armor wasn't really looking black. And the reason why it didn't look too black was because it had a lot of pure black next to it. The pure black it had on the shoulder and the head made the armor look less black because in contrast between the two blacks, the pure black of the primer was winning. Now that we painted the details that were black, the armor is looking a lot darker in contrast with everything around the model. Keep in mind I have a matte here that's also black, but if you look at the model like this, like, it's black. The armor is looking black. You can do some work on it if you want, like going back to your really dark blue that you used to shade the hourglass with, and kind of stipple it in on the edges of the lights to reduce them and blend them in a little bit so that they look more, the highlights are even smaller. It is up to you, like I'm doing it just for show really. I was pretty fine with the armor already. But, you know, you can do whatever you want now. Let me just check under a normal light. No, okay, I want to push the lights a little bit on the skull side. I'm gonna be adding a little bit of white to the German yellow and just block it in here. I wasn't going to add white, but I feel like I need a little bit more brightness. Yeah, I prefer this. This looks a bit more focal. So yes, okay. Next up, we have to do the freehand on the shoulder. I'm gonna sketch it in with a gray, so that if it doesn't look very good, I can always remove it quickly, rather than using just white immediately. So we're going to be having a U here. You know, honestly, don't know. Is that? How does the Ultramarine sound? Give me a second. Okay, I checked a bit of a image just to make sure, and it is slightly more rounded. So we're going to be making it slightly more rounded. The center is like a sphere. So we can fill it in. And then we can start fixing anything we don't like. We can go back to our blue. Just refine it now. Since we did sketch so lightly, it's easy to go over it. Yeah, we just gotta refine it, but in the meantime, before I jump into the definition, I'm gonna be highlighting a little bit the shoulder pad itself. Gonna be adding a little bit of white to our Prussian blue. Okay. I'm gonna make the color cover, get it to base coat, and then shade it down with the Prussian blue, and we're gonna be done with the model. I have removed the model from the base, which actually is amazing. I love these bases. I hope GW keeps doing them, because they allow you to put the model on the base and paint it from the handle without actually having to pin it if you don't want to base him. That's amazing, actually. I love it. I'm going to be using textures I never used before, so we're gonna try them out together. I'm gonna be using beach sand and sandy desert from AK. Let me find a way to open them. Okay, we did it. So let's start from beach sand. The base of this guy won't be exactly super elaborate because he covers most of it with his jacket, but we can still try, right? We can place some of this beach sand at the front in little mounds like this. Want him to look like he's walking through a desert. Okay. And then after cleaning our little basing tool, we can use the other one, sandy desert. They should be different from each other. Yeah, this one is more I think this one is thicker. Yeah, this one is thicker. We can have this one be like our main base. We can expand this around a little bit. I think we can kind of blend them in. Once I've finished placing these in all of the unbased area, I can kind of blend the two together and make like a mix, I think. It would be cool. I also want to make sure that these mounds I have placed don't dry looking like, you know, poop with the little dot at the end. Because it is sand, so it has to be like a bit of a rounded shape to it. I actually really like this texture. It's already sort of drying in a few spots, and it's really, really cool. Okay, I can clean the tool, and I can add a bit more of the other sand towards the front of the base. Make it look like he's, you know, going from one part of the desert to another, or something like that, just to make it look like they're blending together a bit. I can add like little amounts of it. I think I can do it on top of the previous one without too many problems. They're gonna dry together and that will be it. But there's only one way to find out. I can add little dots of it leading up to the big group, so that it looks more like an actual blend between the two biomes, rather than just, you know, like, oh, this is one desert, well, it ends, here's another one. They blended in with the wind and stuff, so there's gonna be little mounds of these sandier desert here, I think. Again, trying to make sure that I don't create little drops of that look like poop once dried. I want it to be natural looking. Okay, I think we're good like this. I might, I don't know, do something else later once it has dried, but for now we are good. So last thing I have to do is fill in uh, the open area, which I should have probably done before, but it doesn't really matter right now. It's too late. I have a piece of a uh, dry milliput that I can just lodge inside. Like this. And slap some glue on it. Like this, and then finish it with a bit more texture on top to call it done. It will dry in there and nobody will know, only us. Okay, so with the hole covered and the base based, we can wait for it to dry and then we can paint it. So I will see you in a few hours actually, but you won't have to wait. Be right back. Okay, so I waited a while and we got our base dry, and we can paint it. I really like the more dark texture. The more thin one, I think it will work better on a bigger scale. I'm not sure it works amazingly for this scale, but it does not matter right now. What we have to do is paint it. So I want to keep it fairly dark and then progressively make it brighter. So I'm gonna start from a burnt amber from Vallejo model color, and I'm going to be slapping it on my palette and working on painting up the details. I'm gonna be using an old brush, not one of my fancier ones. I can add some black to it to make it a little bit darker. We can just, boom, paint it in. As for our more bright texture, we can use Japanese uniform for now. Sorry, English uniform for now. And see where we go from here. I probably need a more desaturated color, so I'm gonna be adding some uh, um, German yellow to it. And then we can kind of drag this color into the previous color to suggest the idea that, yes, there are bigger speckles of sand in there, but we can also have minuscule amounts of it that you don't see in the actual texturing. Okay, it's gonna be a fairly simple base, I believe, but the model covers so much of it, and I'm not really too interested in having it competition ready for the base or super display ready for the base. So I just want him to work on it. Okay. We can use some white mixed into our German yellow. I don't want to go too bright with this, of course, because it is a base. Don't want to drag too much attention to it, but you know, it would be cool to slap some color in there. Okay. And then we can add a bit of German yellow to our base brown. And we can clean the brush quite a lot and sort of dry brush to highlight as well as to kind of blend, really. Okay, nothing too crazy happening on this base, as I said. I'm not really looking for anything super fancy. You know, might be helpful to you to see some quick blending happening on this base. When you're working on such big areas, if you keep the paint thin enough, you can do some really cool blends, like without too much effort, really. So basically wet blending. Okay, how does the guy look next to it? Oh, it's fine. We can give it a bit of a glaze of a dark orange. I'm gonna be using Chimera orange. Okay, we can make it a lot darker than this. Thin it quite a lot. Clean the brush. If you don't clean the brush, you will still have unthinned paint left on it, even though you thin the paint, and that's going to create you a lot of issues. So clean the brush, load it with the glaze you have, and you can just. I don't mind these yellowish tones, but I would like the base to be a bit more uniformed. I don't think the effect has to be so noticeable. It can be more of a, yeah, more like this. And yeah, we can let it dry. Do a couple more of these dark washes, keeping the colors alive where we have them, just having the paint just kind of slide in. You can use a wash, you can use an ink, you can use an oil paint if you want, and then we're gonna be done with our base. So the next time you see me, I will be having the model assembled onto the base and possibly refined a little bit. This is how it looks like right now. I'm very happy with him. I think it's cool. But there are a few things I could change, like push the blending in a few spots, have glints of light made a bit stronger in a few other spots. You know, just minuscule changes that you can only really do when you are like fully focusing on something and not thinking about much else. So yes, this is how it looks like. I hope you enjoyed the guide, and I will see you in a few minutes when, well, actually, in your case, I will see you in a few seconds with the finished model on the base, so you can get a final look. And that is it. Okay, and I think we're done. The last thing we have to do is paint the rims of the base of a different color that isn't black. The reason why I'm doing that is because of white balance. As I mentioned in a previous guide, white balance is a very important topic, and I can't really discuss this in the span of a short guide like this. If you want to, I can expand upon it. But when you're painting something, you always have to put your mind on where black and white is. And if I'm painting an armor to look black, then I want every other color around the model to never be black, except the black lining, of course. But I don't want any blackness, if possible, around the model. I will turn stuff that should look black to a dark gray, keeping the black on the armor. Doing that, I achieve blackness on the armor. So it's the opposite of white balance, really. I'm not balancing the model towards white, figuring out where the whites are and how to balance around them. And you usually do that when you do non-metallic. You paint non-metallic so that the highlights of the metal are white, so that every other color around it won't get to pure white, so that the metals look shinier because they're metallics. You can do the same towards black. I black balanced so that the armor looked black. The only thing I have to remove now is this black rim, because this black glossy rim is a problem for our black armor. So I'm going to be putting the guy on top of a base, painting it with a rim, and then I'll show you the finished version. And there we go, we're done. I painted it. I painted the rim of the base using a very dark ochre brown, which I mixed from my own palette, that of the colors we had here. The English uniform with the dark orange we mixed. I got a coat on it and we're done. I didn't go bright because there was no need to go bright. I just needed a not black color. So any color that it wasn't black, just a little bit brighter than black, even a very dark gray, would have worked. And that is it. That is it. I think we're done with the model. I'm going to be taking a few pictures of it, see how it looks like in picture, fix anything that I don't like from the pictures, and then take pictures again if I have to, and we'll be done. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the guides we did on this guy. I did enjoy making them. This is a fun model, dude. This is a really fun model to paint. I hope they do end up releasing it outside of Indomitus, because it is a really cool model. More people should paint it. But yes, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining the Patreon. Have a fantastic rest of the day. I will see you later in the next guide. Bye bye.